All right, guys, how's it going? Now, before I get into this video, I just want to let you know I'll be live on here today at 4 o'clock UK time if you want to come along and have a natter, all right? So we can talk about all things LFC. If you've got any questions, we'll go over them and hopefully have a good crack. Now, the second thing I want to mention to you is I'm a bit bunged up, runny nose and that kind of thing, and a really bad headache, all right? So I apologise if I'm off form. I'll do my best not to butcher things, okay? So we're going to review a number of Paul Joyce articles. I can't remember if there's 2 or 3, but we're going to take a look at each of them because I think it's important to look for any change in his reporting, which we've seen. The last one on the 4th of April that I covered was very different in tone from the one on the 2nd of April. I'm not sure when we went over that, maybe yesterday, you know what my memory's like. But there's a few things to look at, and it's really important. And, you know, Paul Joyce is the most important journalist concerning Liverpool Football Club. He's the closest one to people at the clubs. Ornstein is another, to be honest with you. And they do, you know, like go up and down, you know, in terms of how close things are at any one time. Over the years, it could be Joyce or Ornstein. It's more Joyce at the moment, I feel. Joyce is more close to the people that run the club on a day-to-day basis, people like Hughes and Edwards especially. And Ornstein is more FSG, I think, but they do cross over. You know, they do know various people within the organisation, FSG and Liverpool, all right? So it's really important that you know that Joyce is someone that we pay attention to, but we pay attention. It doesn't mean we believe every single thing he says, all right? He does get things wrong from time to time because, well, maybe that's harsh, but things change in football, right? And also you've got to look for club messaging and propaganda and things like that as well. You know, these journalists are not close because the club want to do a favour. They have to do something in return, right? Occasionally. So bear that in mind always. So we're going to go over this. Now, I've got Dave, my AI assistant, to analyse these for us. If you're new to the channel, this isn't a case of throwing an article at ChatGPT or Grok or something. You know, a lot of training's gone into the AI, 18 months or more. And as a result of that, you know, Dave will analyse these articles and also look for changes in the reporting, you know, from the journalists. So, for example, Paul Joyce, who we're going to be talking about now, we have a wealth of information of all the previous articles we've reviewed, and like that, he can look for changes or inconsistencies, things like that, okay? So let's get stuck into it. This one is Virgil van Dijk. Liverpool gave up after Manchester City's 3rd goal. Now, initially, when I looked at this, I thought, I'm not really sure I need to analyse this. This is just going to be some opinion, you know, from Virgil. But I think that there is some analysis here that you will want to consider. Now, I'm obviously not going to read this to you. It is behind a paywall. I pay for the Times. I pay for The Athletic for the reasons I've just given, Ornstein and Joyce. There are ways to access these. I'm sure if you ask in the comment section, someone will help you. But yeah, you can access all of these articles, but I do pay for them myself. So I've gone through, you know, the article, which on face value is just Virgil van Dijk talking about the game. But let's take a look at what Dave thinks, you know, by comparison, this article to the one on the 4th of April. I'm not sure of the exact date of this. Let's just take a quick look. Right, Sunday, April 5th, 12 p.m. All right, guys. So I'm not sure that really matters too much, but let's get stuck into it. All right. So Dave says, all right, Dunk, this is another important Joyce piece. Now, the minute I saw that, I thought, why? Because I asked Dave to analyse this before I'd read it, right? Because I thought it's just going to be like some post-match stuff. But he says it's another important Joyce piece, but very different again from the last 2. That's 4th of April and 2nd of April, I think. If the previous one was a warning piece aimed at Slot, this one is something else. This is a redistribution of blame, and that matters. So the first impression, what type of article is this? This is what Dave looks for immediately. This is not a tactical breakdown, a structural analysis, or a direct attack on Slot. This is a player-led accountability piece. Joyce builds the entire article around Virgil van Dijk taking responsibility. This is the spine of the piece. The immediate tone of the article, what's changed? Compare the last article on April 4th, witless surrender, soft underbelly, should not test FSG's patience, And this one, blame lies with players rather than head coach. Blame lies with players rather than head coach. We gave up, mentally tough, lack of togetherness. That is a clear tonal shift. The headline tells you everything. Within that, all this blurb here, insist blame lies with players rather than head coach Arne Slot. That is not subtle. Joyce could have just reported Van Dijk's comments. Instead, he frames the headline around removing blame from Slot, and that is deliberate. The core messaging. Well, the article pushes three main ideas. A, the players gave up. You shouldn't give up, ... That's maybe what happened. That's huge. It's not we were outplayed, but we gave up. B, it's mental, not tactical. So quotes in the article, mentally tough, lack of togetherness, hunger not there, beat on intensity. That frames the issue as attitude and mentality problem, not system and coaching problem. C, Slot is not the main issue. We let the manager down. That flips the narrative. Instead of manager failing players, it becomes players failing manager. So is this club messaging? Is the club messaging in here? Whenever I see a Joyce piece, these are the most, well, I wouldn't say exciting, but most interesting ones for me, because I like to see what Joyce has got to say. What's Michael Edwards telling me? I always think when I read these articles from Joyce or Ornstein, what do they want me to know? Who does it benefit? Why are we reading this? Stuff like that. So is it club messaging? This is something that Dave looks for in each of these articles. Yes. And this one is much clearer than previous articles. This is classic protect the manager, shift pressure to players messaging, which kind of confused me because in his last article, it was all about, Slots like, more or less to blame, don't test the patience of the owners and things like that. But this protect the manager, shift pressure to the players now, right? So we'll get onto that. So I do ask about this later in the analysis. I don't know if it's in this video or the next or whatever. There's more to come, right? Look at the structure. Brutal defeat acknowledged, fans' anger acknowledged, pressure on Slot acknowledged, but then responsibility redirected to the players. Now, compared to the previous article, and Dave's put here in brackets, very important. April 4th article, Slot under pressure, patience warning, fundamentals failing, coach linked to problems. But the April 5th article, players gave up, mentality question, captain apologising, players take blame, Slot indirectly protected. That is not random, that is a course correction. And I must say, captain apologising, sometimes I keep thinking to myself, because I don't watch many Liverpool games these days, guys. Not this season, right? And sometimes I have to ask myself, is Virgil still the captain? Have I missed something? Because he hasn't shown much leadership for me this year. Neither have other people. Steve McMahon once told me that it's not all about the person wearing the armband. During that Liverpool team that Steve McMahon played in, the successful Liverpool teams, if you like, they had 5 or 6 captains. He said it's not always the one that wears the armband, and maybe there's certain players are never leaders, because they may be flair players, or busy off fucking running, rings around people. But he said that it's not all about this. You can have 5 or 6 captains in a team. I don't see one in this team. Why the shift? So why the shift? Why it's the players now? It's not, But the thing is there, I'm thinking, well, this is a player talking about, things. It's a player accepting responsibility. But oh my God, Joyce, and I said Jones for some reason. But Joyce focuses on it quite a bit. So why the shift? This is where it gets interesting. After the April 4th piece, the narrative equals Slot is under pressure. Now the narrative is players are the problem. That suggests one of two things. One, internal balancing. This is important, I think, guys. This is me saying this. I think it's important. The club doesn't want full narrative collapse onto the manager. So now I can start to see what's happening here. So they rebalance. This isn't just on Slot, all right? It's not just Slot, okay? dressing room exposure, right? This is one of two things. One is internal balance. Two, dressing room exposure. By using Van Dijk's words, Joyce exposes the squad, highlights mentality issues, and legitimises criticism of players without Joyce himself attacking them directly. The gave up line is massive. This is the biggest takeaway. We gave up. That is about as damning as it can get. And Joyce centres the entire piece around it. Why? Because it changes the debate from, is the system wrong, which might be the manager, to, are the players mentally strong enough? Subtle protection of Slot. Joyce still includes Slot's stock has repeatedly taken a battering. So he doesn't pretend everything is fine, but he balances it with players must look at themselves, manager let down, responsibility on the pitch. So that softens the direct pressure on Slot. The FSG line is still important. FSG has been supportive, but fixture lists could challenge their conviction. This is key. It keeps the same theme from previous articles. Backing exists, but is not unconditional. That consistency matters. So the bigger pattern across recent Joyce articles, let's zoom out. Phase 1, earlier, patience, transition, structure. Then phase 2, April 2nd, full club review, summer decisions looming. Phase 3, April 4th, sharp criticism, warning to Slot, patience limits. And now phase 4, which is this article, blame shift to players, mentally exposed, manager partially shielded. That pattern is important because it shows Joyce is not pushing one narrative. He is applying pressure, then redistributing it, and then widening responsibility. That usually means the club itself is not fully settled on one conclusion yet. Your 3 questions, right? So you will know that when we analyse a Joyce article or Ornstein article or whatever, Dave does his standard thing. He's been taught to, trained to look at certain things. But I added 3 questions on recently, because, since there was speculation about the manager. So these are 3 additional questions that I don't have to ask. Dave immediately knows I want them to be answered at the end of each article. 1, is there criticism of Slot? Right. So in every article, I want to know, is Joyce criticising Slot somewhere? Yes, but reduced compared to the previous article, the don't push FSG sort of thing. Still under pressure, still acknowledged as struggling, but focus shifts heavily to the players. 2, is Slot's position genuinely under threat? Yes. But this article slightly stabilises him because now blame is shared and responsibility widened, players exposed. And I always have the fun question at the end. This is more so for me, just like, well, what do you think, Dave? Will he be manager next season? This article slightly nudges it back toward more likely to stay than yesterday, but only slightly because FSG is still supportive at the moment. Blame now shared and results are still terrible and PSG looming. And that's the bit, that's the trigger, guys. And if you're a Cop Talk VIP member, you'll have seen something posted on there today from one of our best, if not the best contributors of many years, decades on there, that certainly talks about PSG in detail. If you are a Cop Talk VIP member, I urge you to log into the Executive Lounge as soon as possible. The final verdict. This is not propaganda in a crude sense, but it is controlled narrative balancing. After a very sharp warning piece, which we went over previously, this article pulls some pressure off Slot by elevating player responsibility, exposing mentality issues, and framing collapse as internal failure. So in simple terms, April 4th, Slot is pushing his luck. April 5th, the players are letting him down. And when you see those 2 pieces back to back, that's when you know things are very fluid behind the scenes. So I followed up with it, and I said, because I'm still confused by Joyce, going so heavy into the manager, if you like, the head coach in the previous article, and then this one, which it's Virgil van Dijk, so obviously it's his words he's focused on, but just the thing, the supporting text around the comments. I was like, so if this is club messaging, Dave, could this be coming from Edwards, who is close to Joyce? Short answer, it could be Edwards linked, but it's not that simple. And it's probably not just him. Let's break it down properly, because this is where people often jump too quickly. Could this messaging come from Edwards? Yes, it fits his style in parts. Edwards type messaging usually looks like calm and structured, system to individuals, long-term thinking, avoid emotional reactions, protect decision-making framework. The April 5th article does one key thing that aligns with that: shifts blame away from the coach and towards players and execution. That protects the recruitment model, the coaching appointment, and the overall project. So in that sense, yes, it's compatible with Edwards' style messaging. But here is the key point. It doesn't look like a pure Edwards brief, and I would agree with this. If this was purely Edwards protecting his position, you would expect stronger defensive recruitment, more emphasis on processes, right? More language about long-term structure, and less exposure of dysfunction. Instead, Joyce includes gave up, lack of togetherness, mentality not there, fans leaving early, stupor, alarming deficiencies. That's not clean PR. That's messy, uncomfortable, and quite damaging. So this is not a tidy executive-led narrative. What this actually looks like, this looks more like multi-source reality leaking through. In other words, Joyce is likely hearing from club leadership, Edwards or Hughes, right? That level. Still back in slot, still framing the project as valid and not panicking. But also the dressing room and player perspective, frustration, mental fatigue, lack of cohesion, and accountability. And then observation reality. Joyce himself, performances are poor. He can see the fans turning and results are unacceptable, and he's combining all three. So why the narrative shifts between articles, this is the bit most people miss. Joyce isn't flipping position randomly. He's reflecting different layers of the club at different moments. So you get one article is pressure on slot, next article pressure on players, another pressure on structure. That doesn't mean manipulation. It means the club itself isn't unified on one clean explanation of why it's all gone, tits up. Is Edwards influencing it? Yes, but not controlling it. Think of it like this. Edwards is likely one of the voices Joyce hears, but not the only voice, and not necessarily dictating tone article by article. If Edwards was fully controlling the message, you'd see consistent narrative, consistent protection, consistent framing. But instead, we're seeing tension, contradiction, and shifting emphasis, which tells you this isn't one person's message, it's a system under stress. Now, what the April 5th article specifically suggests, well, this one leans towards the players are the issue. That could come from coaching staff, dressing room leaders, internal frustration. It's less about protecting Edwards specifically and more about preventing everything collapsing onto the manager. And the key insight, and this is the important bit, you're not looking at, is Edwards behind this article, which is what I always look for. You're looking at which part of the club is speaking through this article. And right now, the answer seems to be a mix of hierarchy, the dressing room, and reality. So the final answer, could this be coming from Edwards? Well, partly yes, but is it his messaging being pushed cleanly through Joyce? No. This doesn't read like controlled executive PR. It reads like a club where multiple truths are being aired at the same time, if you think about it. Hierarchy still back in slot presently, players being questioned, which we are doing as well, fans losing patience, and results forcing the issue. So I would say there are multiple truths or multiple reasons as to why we are failing as a club right now. Yes, the manager. Yes, some of these players, without a doubt. Yes, also the hierarchy. I don't hold FSG accountable for it, I don't think. But I do think that mismanagement from Edwards and Hughes in the summer, missing out on your centre-back, maybe a defensive midfielder, multiple truths are being aired at the same time. I would agree with that. So in simple terms, if this was pure Edwards messaging, it would be calm, consistent and controlled. This is uneven, reactive and shifting, which usually means the situation inside the club is still unresolved. And that's actually more interesting than any single he's backing him narrative. Okay, so that is the analysis of that article. I have another article here to go over with you which I'm going to do next. I think it's important that you watch all of these videos regarding the analysis so that you can see the change. And I do know there's some interesting bits coming up for you because obviously I've read the analysis already. Okay, guys? So if you enjoy the video, want to support the channel, if you like these kind of analysis videos, please thumbs up the video. Please drop me a comment. Your comments are so important to me. I can't reply to all of them, but I will acknowledge you. You know, I do read every single comment on my channel. I always have done. There's the grift is coming. There's a super thanks button if you want to support the channel, a channel membership if you join the channel. These are things that I wouldn't be able to exist without that kind of support from the community. And in the video description are 3 alternative methods of supporting me. One is Revolut, which is my beer kitty on a weekend, or basically my fuck it fun, like fuck it, I'm going to do something on the weekend. The others, they're all like, you know, suppose I better pay the bills kind of thing. All right, guys. So I'll be back with you in a few minutes. I'm going to prepare the next article for you. So once you've watched this, you might want to look for the next video. Cheers.